experiences. They're speaking out about the institutionalized racism, sexism, and bigotry which pervades the military. They're speaking up about the rapes and murders happening in our bases. They're educating you on the stark epidemic of post-traumatic stress disorder, which haunts this generation of service members. Each speaker deserves your applause, but due to the length of this panel, we ask that you please hold further applause until the end. I've never met a more patriotic group of young men and women than in the ranks of IVAW. I've never found them quibbling about the size of flag lapel pins, but whenever there's a gathering of IVAW members, you can be sure a copy of the United States Constitution is in your hand. IVAW members still remember their oath to defend the United States from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And this struggle begins here, speaking to a public which was misled into an illegal imperialist war under false pretenses. With such high cost of human life and limb, I'm saddened when to many people the only cost which they can relate to the Middle East is the rising cost of gasoline. I've spoken with many people in our community, and though they all seem to be echoing the same disgust for the occupation, they seem to not know what to do about Indian. As you listen, I ask all of you to attempt to relate to the words you hear today. I hope that your words will inspire you to stand up with your conviction that this war was unjustly started and must justly end. As you listen, think about what you can do to support these veterans who are standing up for what you believe in. I have a few suggestions about what you can do to end this war. You can tell your friends about IVAW. You can visit IVAW.org and view our congressional testimony from May 15th, as well as our Winter Soldier testimony from last March 13th through 16th. You can join the IVAW Coalition, a diverse group of local activists who banded together to support IVAW and our demands for immediate withdrawal from the Middle East, reparations for Iraqis, and full VA benefits for our veterans who have given so much. You can write letters to the editors and to your representatives. You can support and encourage GI resistors. You can donate care packages for our service members overseas. And you can start demanding accountability from the Bush administration, which continues to shed the blood of so many of our country's most courageous men and women, while they and their friends turn a profit. But for now, you can please silence your cell phones if you've not done so already, and please listen to our first speaker. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Seth Daniel. I was a sergeant in the Mountain Company, 1st and 5th Infantry. I was a specialist while I worked in Iraq. I was a driver, vehicle commander, and a 240 machine gun for a time. I joined the Army after 9/11. I was working in a gun store when the economy took a downturn. And being a U.S. employee, I was laid off. My wife and I had a new baby at the time, and after doing some temporary work as a security guard, I joined the Army. My recruiter told me that my wife would be able to use my GI Bill to complete her bachelor's degree. Well, this turned out to be a complete lie. We were without recourse. Out of my 4 years of service, I was fortunate to have only served in one deployment. Many people who joined at the same time as I have been on several deployments by now. Many have been stop-loss, and I'm very fortunate to have gotten out when I did. Occasionally, I stop by the barracks of 2nd and 23rd Infantry on Fort Lewis. It's their Rear D barracks. The Rear D unit is the unit that takes care of administrative issues while their parent unit is deployed. They're comprised largely of wounded soldiers and soldiers no longer able to function in Iraq. The scene there is devastating. The chow hall has a wheelchair ramp. There are men walking around on crutches. There's no women in the infantry, so I'm not excluding women, but the unit's at a breaking point. Soldiers with physical and mental pain self-medicate, leading to disciplinary and legal problems. You cannot expect people to use force, coercion, and brutality as a sole means of dealing with people for a full year and a half, and then expect them to return to society without problems. My own experience in Iraq hardened my ideas that this war is wrong. I'll share a story out of my journal that I kept while I was in Iraq. At the time we were guarding a police station in Talabhar, I I had just assisted in the questioning of a prisoner, and another was brought in. This was a prisoner of this second prisoner was a prisoner of the Iraqi police. I stayed in the room while an Iraqi police officer interrogated me. There were 4 men on top of the prisoner. One was smothering him with a blanket, one was pummeling the poor man's kidneys with his fists, another was striking the man with a clean run from an AK-47, and the last was attempting to insert bottling in the prisoner's rectum. Television had always portrayed torture as a rather well-ordered affair that involved some sodium chloride dental fix. In reality, it looked more like a frat house gang raid. I had left the room a couple of minutes earlier to translate. Before I had left, I had told Ali, an Iraqi police officer, not to hook the prisoner's feet to an electrical cord. Ali had told me through pidgin Arabic and sign language that if he touched one of each of the wires of the prisoner's feet, he would feel it in his genitals. I told him no and went out to find the interpreter to question the man. As we entered the office, we saw that more people had joined into the interrogation. The prisoner's hands were bound and he was lying on his stomach. His eyes were blindfolded and his flannel shirt had been torn open. I could hear him trying to scream through his gag. His face was a mask of pain. No, I said, you can't torture him. The man with the bottle got up. The punching stopped. The man with the cleaning rod struck the prisoner once more for good measure, then sat him up facing me. He had cried through his blindfold, and when they removed the gag, he drew a bloody saliva onto his white clothing. Since the Abu Ghraib scandal, the U.S. has shied away from torture as a matter of policy, or at least the U.S. Army has. The CIA still does this, and regularly in other government organizations. The Army outsources this activity to the Iraqi police. In Mosul, prisoners who were uncooperative were sent to a police station where they were tortured and sent back willing to say anything. When I was in Talafar, I had to work in our detainee holding area. These prisoners were kept for weeks with their hands bound. This precluded them from any kind of practical hygiene. Prisoners smelled, they had rashes on their bodies, some were very ill. They were kept in a drafty shack with plexiglass walls and muddy floors that sat in the middle of a large mud pit surrounded by concertina wire. One time an Iraqi man approached me while I was on guard there at the detainee center. He told me that his father was ill and needed medical attention. The old man was lying on his side, writhing in pain. He was jaundiced and plain frosty. I went to get the medics. They arrived and said that the old man was just too lazy to get up and use the latrine. They said that they were not obligated to treat prisoners. When I protested, they asked me if I was a medical professional. They scolded me for wasting their time and left. The things that we do in Iraq are disgraceful. We're selling our country's good name abroad and diminish our credibility when we confront other countries about their human rights records. How can we possibly criticize other countries when we treat people this way?
Hello, my name is Ash Wilson. I'm 26 years old. I'm from the Bellingham chapter of IVAW, chapter 32. I joined Wisconsin Army National Guard in 1999 at Weaver College. I come from a small town, and as many people that join the military know, there's less and less financial aid for people that want to go to college, but yet there's more money in the military promised for college education. I joined the National Guard specifically because they paid 100% tuition, and we were promised not to be deployed overseas. I was deployed twice, once to Nicaragua for a peacekeeping operation, and in 2003, in February, I was activated before the invasion. I wasn't in the invasion. I went there in May, and I was stationed in Tallulah, Iraq, south of Al-Nasiriyah. My unit is combat engineers, and although we didn't do any combat engineer requirements in Iraq, we did security force, and we worked with civil affairs a lot, and who did security for important personnel. And what I want to emphasize is the loss of humanity during war. The value of human life is reduced to nothing. What I saw disgraced me as a human being and changed my perspective of the purpose of war. I saw how no one that is involved in war benefits. The civilians in Iraq, they don't benefit, and the soldiers returning from Iraq, they see no benefit either. The only people that see benefit are the corporations that are profiting from the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Before we would go on missions, we would have briefings of the type of combat that we would see in the area that we're in. And one thing that was often told to us was that the Iraqi children are dropping hand grenades in vehicles. I had never seen this, but we were told to keep the children away from the vehicles at all costs. And this created a problem because the first soldiers in Iraq were giving candy to the Iraqi children. So whenever you roll into a town, children rush your car asking for IVAW candy. And we were told that the children can't be close to us. So what some soldiers did was buy slingshots, and they would shoot slingshots at children. Rocks, pebbles, BBs, anything. But more commonly, we would hold our guns at the children and threaten to shoot them. I did this. At children as young as 6 years old, I would hold a gun to their head. We had 2 people in my squad that were under 19 years old. One kid had turned 18 2 weeks before being deployed to Iraq. And he was given the choice of shooting children or not. This is a great decision for such a young guy. I was 21 when I was in Iraq. I was the second oldest person in my squad. This showed me that the decimation of humanity that is involved in war. When I got back from Iraq, I self-medicated, I drank, I got arrested, DUIs. And last year, I went to the VA. I went to the VA for help. Tried to file a claim for PTSD. And the therapist that determines if you have PTSD said, yeah, you have PTSD. But there's no benefits. There's no help. So the VA works against the soldiers returning from Iraq. 18 veterans commit suicide every single day. Thank you.
My name is Jane Critchfield. I was in the Washington Army National Guard. I joined in 2001, straight out of high school. I was 17 years old. I joined a journalism unit. We were attached to the 1st Cavalry Division in Baghdad in 2004. One of my first missions in Iraq really brought me in contact with really this problem of operating in an urban environment. I was covering one of the 1st Armored Division. We were first attached to the 1st Armored Division, but it was an ambulance unit, and they were transporting from an Army hospital to a Red Crescent truck 2 Iraqis that had been shot at a checkpoint. And just imagine driving through your hometown. You've been driving through there on the same route to and from, home to work or something like that, and all of a sudden there's barbed wire across the road, and you're being shot at because you're driving too fast at that checkpoint. And that's what had happened to these 2 people. It was a man and his wife, and she had been shot through her shin bone, and it had been shattered. And so, that was the first story that I covered when I got to Iraq. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was when I was on a night patrol near Tallulah Square, which is near Ivy Street. The way that a patrol will move is you'll move sort of parallel to the guy across the street from you, and you'll watch the rooftop above him. And so I was watching the rooftop, and it was nighttime. It was really dark. A lot of Baghdad has narrow alleyways because it wasn't built for cars and everything like that. And we were moving along, and it was all deserted. This was late at night, like 11 or 12 at night. And like I said, I was watching the rooftop over top of the machine gunner that I was with. And I saw somebody moving on the rooftop, and it caught my attention. I raised my rifle up, and I saw somebody staring back at me through one of the holes that was in the wall there. And I couldn't, it took me a second, like I said, it was dark, but I mean, after a couple seconds, I realized that it was a little girl, and she was just looking back at me, and I was staring my rifle straight at her face, and it took her a couple seconds to realize what was going on, and then she ran off. And that's just one of those situations. I mean, you have these what are called tactical checkpoints that are set up like on the fly. That's one situation that a civilian could be injured or killed. Also, just in a sort of confusing, maybe you're being told that it's a dangerous part of town, and patrols have been having grenades thrown at them from rooftops. And so, when you're told these things and you're put in that situation, you might be just that much closer to somebody that's totally innocent. The other situation I wanted to talk about was another mission, maybe a month later in the same area, same unit. We were moving down to what we call the Syrian apartments, which were where a lot of foreigners had lived during the Islam regime. And we had moved down to the base of some of the apartments. We hadn't searched any of them or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, a sniper started firing at one of the Bradleys there. And he was on top of one of the apartment buildings. And there had been people in this square that were going about their business, Iraqis that were going about their business, doing errands and everything like that. And then as soon as the shooting started, they all started running in all directions. And one man carrying a bag started running towards the squad that I was with. And he didn't see us, I don't think, until he got maybe within 20 feet. And I was waiting there for him, pointing my rifle straight at his chest. And like I said, he has a bag in his hand, and you hear about people, you know, like I was talking about, you hear about people throwing grenades off the rooftop, or you hear about people carrying a bag, maybe there's a bomb in the bag, maybe, you know, I mean, people talk about, well, they could have bombs, you know, strapped under their robes or something like that. And so, you know, when you're put in those types of situations, I have no weapon on safe. I was this close to killing this guy, and he was just running errands. So, those are the two situations I think that really stuck with me the most since I returned. I think, like, looking back, like, you know, it wasn't the times that I was shot at myself or anything like that, or the danger that I might have been in or anything like that. It was the times that I came close to murdering innocent people. And since I've been back, like, you know, I mean, my way of looking at those experiences has changed so much, and just remembering things like how people would watch videos of Iraqis being killed by coalition forces, say, there are some actually fairly famous clips if you go on YouTube. You can search for them yourself, and you'll actually see people commenting like, F those Hajis, kill them all, that kind of stuff. And, you know, they would watch what I called war porn, and they would, you know, laugh about it, and you know, that's the other factor, is this sort of element of dehumanization. If you start to say, you know, oh, I'm going to go down to the Haji bar, you know, or I'm going to, and, you know, Haji was an epithet that people used to describe all Iraqis. Like any Iraqi was considered like a Haji. And so, I mean, when you start to refer to people by that type of a term, they start to look less than human. I mean, honestly, like, people were always like, oh, well, I'm not sure who, you know, who in the community is an enemy. You know, I mean, they don't wear a uniform. So, I mean, if you have people that are out there that don't view an Iraqi death the same as like U.S. death or something like that, then you start to put people in situations where they might be just a little bit more likely to pull the trigger. And I also wanted to talk about my unit's job. We were, like I said, I was a journalist. We were journalists that were covering the 1st Cavalry Division. And sort of the unspoken, it wasn't like a directive that we were given. It wasn't a set of words that we were given, but we were there to counter the liberal media bias. And this is something that our audience was the Killeen, Texas area around Fort Hood, which is where the 1st Cavalry Division was based. And so, you know, the emphasis was on reporting on humanitarian aid missions that the U.S. forces were go out in the community and we distribute frozen chickens to them as a sign of goodwill, or, you know, hey, don't shoot at us, we're giving you chickens. And that was probably one of the most common types of stories that I read. And it was, I wrote about, say, a transformer station opening, but I wouldn't write about how it got blown up 2 weeks later. So, there was definitely a slant that my journalism had while I was there. So, I don't know what else you can call that other than propaganda. And that's, like I said, our target audience were U.S. citizens. So, we weren't really briefed on the situation there, the politics, the history of the country. I would basically interview whoever the highest ranking person that I could get my hands on, and put their stuff in verbatim without really doing any fact checking. That was kind of the way that my workflow went. We also hired Iraqi journalists to write articles for the local community over there, and so we would invite them to our media operations center and everything, so they were definitely producing news of a certain perspective. One more thing that I want to talk about were just what things that we're doing over there that might be angering people and making them want to fight against us. And I think that as far as what I saw was just the inaccuracy of intelligence, the inaccuracy of the raising we were doing. We would go into people's homes and it would be any military-age male. And these people are the people that are going and they're the breadwinners of these homes a lot of times. And so if you go into a community and you start abducting every male between the age, the youngest person I saw arrested there was probably 10 years old. I think he was accused of throwing grenades at a patrol. And, I don't know how old the oldest was, but if it's anybody that was military age, and you go into communities like this, well, what do you expect? Are they going to fight against you or not? They're going to Abu Ghraib, and I think I probably was on a patrol or a raid that found actual munitions maybe once or twice. Usually it was their own personal AK-47. And also just that sometimes it would just be a neighborhood rivalry. They would be like, okay, we'll go over to this house, this guy's a bad guy. And, well, do we actually base that on any evidence? No, we just go and we knock on the guy's door and take him to prison. And then he would be handed over to the Iraqi police, which is what says. So, thank you for listening.
My name is Sergeant Corrigan. I served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps with 7th Regiment. I've spent 2 deployments in Iraq. First was during the initial invasion, and I was there from March all the way till November in the city of Najaf. And my second deployment was from August of 2004 through March of 2005, which was spent on the Syrian border. First things I would have covered, as soon as we got to the unit and we received the word that there's a possibility that we're going to be invading Iraq, pretty much propaganda started spreading. They started telling us that you have to be ready for little kids to shoot at you, be ready for women to fight you, and just saying that, pretty much saying everything to make those people seem like they're animals and they're lower than everybody else. During the first deployment, our primary mission was as a humanitarian work, and during the whole deployment, all the way till November, the only humanitarian work that we did was probably a week or two trying to fix a park in the city, which too was devastated by everything, and that was the only thing we did for a week or two, and it was a different platoon. And after that, the only thing we were doing is harassing people, driving like crazy on the streets, pretending like it's our country, it's our city, and we can do whatever we want to do. One of the times at the ammunition supply point that we were guarding, because they had a lot of ammunition saved up from whatever they were collecting when Saddam Hussein was in power, we were ordered to protect it and take necessary actions to make sure that those people that are trying to steal it, which was probably trying to feed their family, because people barely have any food and water there, And that's what Saddam Hussein used to do to execute people. And we knew that people knew it, and we would put them on the ground, and we would just fire shots like we were shooting at them, shoot at their cars, shoot in the air, calling them names. There was, and continuously, we were told to, everybody wants to get you, everybody wants to kill you, you have to be careful, everybody's against you, we're just here to make sure everything goes clean. Racism. And the thing that struck me the most is that when I joined the military, I was trying to escape things that I was exposed to back home. And when I came in, it was really sad to see that it was racism in the military to their own troops, out loud in the open, from pretty much every rank. And it was ridiculous. And that was one of the things that it seemed like a fun joke, and you know, that joke turned into destroying people's lives in Iraq. And the next thing I want to cover is my second deployment. I was deployed in a town up in IVAW in Bar Province, right on the Syrian border. This time I was a member of a Scout Sniper platoon, so our mission was a little bit different. Pretty much what we did was just go out in town and search for people to shoot. The first day, as soon as we got to our base in Luseba, the second day our company commander, our first lieutenant, and one of our NCOs got blown up by an IED. And rules of engagement before were set to, if you see any weapons, call it in, to make sure to get a clearance to shoot people. After that, the second day, suddenly things started changing. If you see a person with a weapon, shoot him. As it continued and the more casualties we received, the rules just went lenient and lenient and lenient. We got to the point where we had to go out in town and look for people with heavy bags and shovels on the intersections acting suspicious. Well, number one, boast a lot of Iraqi citizens trying to rebuild their country, and a lot of them carried those bags and the shovels. And a lot of people would stand and take a break, probably from walking, and we would call in and we would take the pictures and we would send them in, and we were allowed to take our shots if anything was suspicious. And at that point in time, everything was suspicious. You can't tell me there's something suspicious, it's something more solid, but we didn't really pay attention to it because we were pissed off, we were angry, we were tired, and we just wanted to go home. Later on, we had no rules of engagement at all. It was go out there, and if you see something that you think is not right, take them out. And later on, probably 2 months before we went back, one of our intelligence units that we lived with, they received a call from one of their people that were helping them out in the city, giving information. They said that there are flyers on streets all over the town telling people to stay off the streets if they're just standing on the streets, because there are unknown snipers in the city that take killing insurgents and innocent people. And when they told us that, it didn't really register, because when we had to shoot somebody, we would always set pictures that we would call in. But now, looking back at it, it's disgusting. It makes me sick just to think that I was so deep into it, I didn't even question what I was told to do. And those people were amazing. And every time we come in contact with people during the first deployment, second deployment, we maybe came in contact with 2 families that we occupied their house for 24 to 48 hours to use it as an observation post. And they were telling us that, just leave. We're tired, we don't know where to go. We turn left, they shoot us. We turn right, they shoot us. We had one family telling us that everybody's so sick and tired of the number of insurgents causing all the problems and the U.S. troops being there, that if we leave, they can just take things into their own hands and fix it and get rid of those little numbers that putting all the Iraqi people in danger every day. And I just want to say that enough is enough. We're done. It's not working. We went there trying to help them. Obviously, we're not doing anything, and it's time to get out of there. And we need to also take care of our troops. One more thing. One of a guy that I lived with, shared the bathroom with, pretty much roommates. He was on suicide watch for a couple months before we were deploying. 3 weeks later, we had a family day, and 3 weeks before that family day, they let him off the suicide watch because they didn't want his parents to see it or to find out about it, I suppose. Then as soon as we deployed, about a month and a half later, 2 months later, we blew his brains out in the shower head. A lot of us come back, only we're trying to go get some help. Psychologist lines are like 1.5 to 2 years long, and the only thing they give you is medication. They give you sleeping pills that you use with alcohol, and you pretty much abuse everything trying to keep your mind off the things that you experienced, and that's about it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joshua Simpson, known as Sergeant Simpson, U.S. Army. I joined the Army when I was 18. Main reasons for me joining were purely financial. I was cautious. I wasn't sure what to do with my life. So, I went to a recruiter, went to Madison, and they were like, hey, you want to be a counterintelligence agent? I said, oh, that sounds cool. So, why not? Anyway, I joined the Army July 2001. I was in basic training. Actually, the field exercise was part of basic training. We were basically like out in like the woods. We were fighting out like the park when September 11th happened. And at first, I totally didn't even believe like what happened. There were stories about the U.S. Army like lying to people, telling them like North Korea invaded South Korea with people out in the field. But once I started hearing like Dan Rather, like Peter Jennings, like over the radio, I was like, man, this is like real. This actually happened. But I was in this for 5 years. And I was very, very lucky that I actually had to go to Iraq once. And while I was there, I was a member of a tactical human intelligence team. And as Evan said earlier, basically the intelligence cycle in Iraq, I was very involved in it. Like, I can see all the different aspects of it. And it's completely ridiculous and very, very flawed. And this is kind of the basis of the war in Iraq and what we're doing during the occupation. So I want to talk about that for a little bit. While I was there, I was with a lot of Kurdish militia groups, informants, or basically just what the same thing as a snitch, basically here, would be people aiding the U.S. and getting information. And I mean, it's obviously a flawed thing. People, the U.S. military, they'll pay money for people to give information to us, and usually they don't provide any sort of evidence that any of these people that we'll hand money to are any people that are reporting on have anything to do with terrorist attacks or the insurgency or whatnot. We'll just pay them, so they'll give us the names of people who they just dislike for some reason, maybe a neighbor they have a feud with, or just anyone. Sometimes that would just be random people, and this information would be the basis of the raids that we would do, and the raids. I know, like, lots of computers and I would probably take to talk about this. But they're one of the more traumatic experiences for me in Iraq that I saw, and I'm sure for the Iraqi people, because we're lucky that for most of us, not everyone in the United States, like immigrants don't have this luxury, but most of us here do, is that we don't have to worry about our doors getting kicked in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? Like I can go to sleep tonight and be fairly certain that no one's gonna kick my door, scare me, arrest me, arrest my parents, arrest my family members. But the people in Iraq don't have that security. And it seems like to me, we've been in Iraq for how many years now, that eventually your door is going to get kicked in. Eventually, U.S. soldiers are going to talk to you. One story I have, which was pretty traumatic for me, was in Iraq, sometimes people used to like to blow the gates of houses off. And at one point, when I was there, the unit I was with, on the raid was with, they blew the gate off of to a home. And there was the grandfather, I guess the grandfather of the person we were like, looking for to detain. He was in the courtyard, and he heard the explosion. He got so scared, had a heart attack, and died. Right? Now, after we searched the house, we found nothing of any sort of intelligence like that. We found no weapons. I think maybe we found an AK, but that's like common, right? Like one AK-47. We didn't find anything that would link this guy to the insurgency. And I don't even really care about this too, but I'm going to share it anyway. But we detained that individual and some of his family members, even though we had no found evidence. And when I got back, I actually interrogated this individual, and I even remember saying that, like telling him about how him being involved in the insurgency killed his grandfather. You know what I mean? Like, was this guy involved in the insurgency? I don't know. I doubt it. Like 95% of people we arrested had little or nothing to do with the insurgency, but we were still told to interrogate them anyway. Also, one thing about interrogations was that we were always like, as an interrogator, we were always told to like, physically go all out on Iraqis. Like if I went down there and talked to someone, came back to my officers in my unit and was like, and told them basically, I don't think this person has anything to do with the insurgency. I don't think they're lying to us. I think we just arrested for really no reason. We found any evidence, and people would tell me, the officers would tell me, well, you're not being mean enough to them. You have to go down there and put the screws to them, like treat them worse, and then they'll talk. And I would get angry because I just be like this is such a waste of my time. This guy doesn't know anything. But I would still have to go down there and yell at the individuals, like, scream at them, knock over tables, throw chairs. They fall on the ground, scream at them while they're laying on the ground. And it was actually really insidious because I would be taking out my frustrations at my chain of command on some poor guy who's just trying to take care of his family. And I don't know. So those individuals, I'm sorry. I'm sure they're not here, obviously, but it really bothers me. And it's also mentioned like loss of humanity, one during war. And I even got to the point where I was so frustrated by the interrogation, the intelligence cycles, that I would actually if I could get information out of people, I would get enjoyment out of the fact that they would be crying. If I let a guy back to his cell after interrogation, he was in tears crying, that was almost as good as being successful in actually getting information out of someone. If I thought I did a really good job, I think it'd be detainee to actually abuse himself, which happened numerous times where I would threaten detainees and they would actually smash their head up against a wall until they were bleeding. And I had to lead back bloody prisoners and explain whatever happened to them. But as far as that was the extent of what I did, which is mostly just psychological torment, which I still think is acceptable, especially when it's innocent people who are just under military occupation. But I did see what the Iraqis did to detainees, and it was extremely terrible. We used to get sometimes we would turn people over to the Iraqi security forces, and they would bring these people back. And when I would see these people, the only equivalent thing that I could compare it to was photos I saw in American history textbooks of basically pre-Civil War slavery. Individuals with scars all over their body, bruises all over their body, basically not an ounce of flesh that is unmarked. And they would come in with these huge lists of crimes that they supposedly admitted to under interrogation. And that's another thing too about torture. It's an extremely ineffective way of gathering intelligence, which I don't even see why our government even wastes their time with debating if waterboarding is even acceptable. Because people will admit to anything under torture, whether they did it or not. And even when we get this information that all these individuals sit under torture, these huge list of that they've been doing every terrorist attack that's ever happened in Iraq. We couldn't even use it because basically I would ask them about it and they would say that I just admitted that because I was being tortured. And I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe he was involved with insurgent attacks on the U.S. But the only way to really find that out is if he really tells us this is coerced through the use of torture. So the torture rate to me is just a ridiculous idea that shouldn't be ended. Hopefully we don't let the politicians keep bringing it up. I came back from Iraq. I got out of the Army. I became a reservist. And while I was a reservist, I was actually I started going to school at Evergreen. Started learning more and more about the Iraq War from a different angle, reading books that kind of, with my experience, piece together the whole picture of like what's actually going on in Iraq. And then I was told that I was getting switched to a unit in Texas to go back to Iraq again for the second time. And really interestingly enough, for school that week, I was actually reading Francis Fanon's Russian here. And in it, he talks about, he basically mentions at one part, soldiers refuse to take part in colonial wars, and I was reading this and I was like, man, I can't do this. So basically then and there I decided, I'm done with the Army. I did my time. I can't even take part in a war like this. I don't even know how I can eventually go back again. Because I don't really want the U.S. to win. I don't want the U.S. to be successful in Iraq. So basically I said fuck it. Anyway, which basically hopefully more soldiers reach that realization as well. But last week it's kind of bummed me out a little bit. I see where this guy's coming from. I read a zine where a soldier says that he doesn't get caught up in the politics of what's going on in Iraq. He just does what he's supposed to do. To us, this might sound like a reasonable response or reasonable action, but I don't think we should let soldiers think that this is a justifiable excuse. We shouldn't let people that basically be ignorant and think that just because they made an oath to protect, to do whatever the military tells them, that's a reason not to revolt, not to basically refuse these appointments. So basically, I'm just encourage resistance. We need to support the troops that refuse to fight. So those are ones who really need our support. Here we go. Basically, before I get done, hopefully we can take what we learned here and not let this war end without us becoming a catalyst for lasting change that prevents other Vietnams, Iraqs, or any other U.S. ventures that our government will continue to wage as long as it continues to exist. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right before I came down here, I went and picked up a sandwich at the Subway on Broadway, and a couple guys came up to me and they said, "Were you over there?" They saw my shirt, and I said, "Yeah," and they said that they had a couple friends that were really messed up, and they appreciated what we were doing here today. I've got a lot of friends. I've got a lot of friends that have terrible experiences they can share with you that would bring you to tears and make you sick to your stomach. But the thing is that the majority of those people, they're not able to get up here and testify. So I'm grateful for that opportunity to testify. But I apologize that my testimony won't be near large enough picture of how terrible, just how this is completely immoral and absurd this is really becoming. I was very, very lucky. I did 4 years in the Army as a Cab Scout, and my 4 years was getting up just in January 2004. Another friend of mine, his 6 years was getting up, and he was supposed to get out a few months before me. I received a notice that I was going to be stopped. I was a stop movement. I wasn't supposed to leave my unit till 2007, which is another 3 years after I was supposed to get out. But my friend, who was supposed to get out before me, was told that he was supposed to stay in the military for an additional 2 or 3 years. So I can't stress how lucky I really was. I slipped out of Iraq. My unit spending 15 months over there, and myself spending 6 months. I knew it was just a bunch of bullshit. I was going over there from the beginning, but it really, my experience over there, the importance of my experience over there is the calm before the storm, and really cementing what I know to be true. And then the longer that we're over there, the more our presence will inflame the violence, and the worse it will be when we leave. It's not that when we leave it's going to be rosy, of course. I think what the idea of us going over there was like fixing a delicate pocket watch with a sledgehammer. We were supposed to go into Turkey to the north of Iraq, but there were some political problems there, and so we ended up missing the war, to many people's regret. And we ended up going to Kuwait. We relieved the unit that had led the charge in Baghdad. We relieved them, 37 Cav, my unit, 1 Cav. And these guys, they had the stare, they had killed God knows how many people and done God knows how much destruction. And we were relieving them. They were going home, and we were going to take up the occupation. They ended up getting pulled back and sent to Crete for additional 12 months after they had gotten to Kuwait and they were about ready to go home. When people began to figure out what was going on. There was a buzz in the air when we relieved them that higher up command, General Sanchez, they were all very, very critical of these guys who were relieving 37 Cav. They had done nothing to secure the infrastructure, provide law and order. It was a disaster, complete disaster. Even the ruined, half-built, half-looted, destroyed, bombed-out palace that we were taking residence in was completely looted. I mean, as much as you can imagine, the wires pulled out of the walls, the windows, the carpet, everything, doors, everything. And that was inside of the compound that we were staying in, let alone the city itself. The city was a complete disaster. After even a terrible 2 weeks, we finally got outside of our little bubble. We had further strengthened our building, fixed the walls that the 37 Cav had knocked over and blown to pieces, and secured the compound. We began to go out and interact with the Iraqis, and first sneaking around in the night, then walking around in these patrols in the cities. I had no idea what the hell we were supposed to be doing. It was a day of urban warfare training or something. I missed that day because I had some kind of duty. It was just totally ridiculous. The sewage was running in the streets. There was no power. There was then of course, it starts to dawn on us that there's something else going on. The first, the children who started throwing stones at us. And the first kill was a sergeant who had come in late. He killed the groom on his wedding day. We came around our ridiculous, the corner of one of our ridiculous patrols, and there was this Iraqi standing in the middle of the street firing his AK-47 in the air, and the sergeant dropped him there in the street in front of his family and everything. It was just one of the first things. And then of course there was the checkpoints that we had to man. One with a group of tankers, a platoon sergeant thought it was a good idea. They'd been out there for days, losing their mind. No clear idea what the hell they were doing there, right? They'd missed the war. They were just kind of wasting time over there. They thought it was a good idea to pull out their dicks and wave them at these little kids that were playing in the mud outside one of their checkpoints. I was at another checkpoint. The father of these kids walked up and reported it to some of our interpreters. It was of course, was just something that gets swept under the rug. So many of these just sick this anecdotes happening. I mean, they had no clear mission. People over there losing their minds, losing the discipline. This checkpoint I was at, I saw several of the Iraqis come in, zipped up with those zip ties, their hands behind their backs, their feet tied up like animals, and thrown in the back of Humvees like burlap sacks of potatoes. And it's just a very strange thing to see. The first one, the prisoner that we took was a very strange situation. A man walked up to the checkpoint. He was totally naked, and the sun was blazing. He's walking out there bare feet on this burning ground, and I think this is a little strange. I tell my NCO, and he walks out there, puts the man on the ground, and he's got these zip ties on him. And we're all now getting these zip ties handed out to him. Ties his legs and his hands up behind his back. And we're like, what do we do with this guy? The interpreter comes out, tells us he wants to see his brother. He's not armed. He wants to be very clear to show us that he's not armed. Well, the sergeant begins to make fun of the man's genitalia, mock him, and the interpreter is kind of like very nervous here, and we're like, well, he wants to go see his brother. Let's send him into with the rest of the POWs, wherever the hell they're going. So, I mean, it's just the most kind of sick thing you can imagine. Then we were going into the homes late at night, and the road ends. The more we interact with these people, the more we hurt them, damage them, embarrass them, brutalize them. Late night inspection, a man pulls a gun on me. Of course, I should have killed him for the rules of engagement, but there's no clear understanding of what the rules of engagement are in the situation. I don't kill the guy because I have a feeling he's not really that bad. Sergeant tackles him, beats him on the ground in front of his entire family. He ends up being a police officer. Thank God I didn't kill him. And so we just beat up a police officer that was working with us in front of his entire family. These things continue to happen. A friend of mine, I used to go over there to try to keep sane when I get a chance to get away from my scout platoon. He was in supply, and he was laughing, and he was telling me that the other day he had gone out with this guy, Lala, this big, giant, 300-pound guy. I don't know what he's doing in the military, and he's so huge. And he said they had found some terrorists, they said, and they had grabbed them and they were throwing them over their heads into these piles of concertina wire. And he was, well, yeah, I'll try to wrap it up. It was well, there's just a continual escalation of this brutality, and they continue to escalate, react right on back with us. The roadside bombing and tearing into our vehicles. The darkest moment for me was a man walking up to me when I was guarding our overpass, and he said, he was talking to me, and I didn't understand what the hell he was saying, but he's bawling, he's crying, he's pointing over there, he wants help. And I say, if this is one chance I can help these people, I've got to help them right here. And I was told to send him away, and he wouldn't go away because he needed help so desperately. And so I shouted at him. I said, "Get out of here! Get the hell out of here!" And the man left, and it's this hopeless look in his eyes. And he looked at me and walked away. And I know that we had, God knows what happened, but I had failed to do anything positive over there. Well, I just like to say that we need to know that the Democrats aren't going to be saving us here. They talk about 60, a majority in the Senate. That's a lie. It takes 40 to filibuster. They could have done that. I like Obama, but he says he can't do it alone, and he's not lying. These people have got to be held accountable. Senator Cantwell told me and several other activists 3 years ago, that they had the control of the purse strings, and if Bush did not start getting the troops out of there, and if did not start to be making some improvement over there, they would cut the funding, and they have failed to do that. They have failed to do that, and